Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, who essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hi, and thank you so much for coming to this call today and talking with me. Just to sort of start off, could you walk us through your journey to sort of get you where you are today?
Hi, Angelina. Thank you so much for having me. I am Dr. Geillan Aly from Compassionate Math, and I used to be a university professor, and then I left my institution and basically started Compassionate Math. Compassionate Math does professional development and math education consulting. I do workshops with students to help them overcome math trauma, and I do one-on-one coaching with K-12 teachers.
I was just curious about sort of the inspiration and motivation behind first you pursuing something related to math, and then sort of moving over to math education and creating and founding Compassionate Math.
So I wanted to go into math. So I graduated college and I was working in the magazine industry on the sales side. And I was really disillusioned, not because it wasn't a great and interesting job. It was a really, really competitive space. It was really fast paced. There was a lot going on. I just felt like I needed more than working in an office for the rest of my life. And I wanted to learn the secrets of the universe. And so I decided to go back to school and study mathematics. I always had a talent for mathematics. When I graduated high school, my teachers told me I should major in mathematics, and I just didn't do it in college. And then I realized that I really wanted to go back and do it. So I quit my job. I went to graduate school. I didn't go to graduate school. I had to go back and get a math degree. And then from there, I went to graduate school. So when I was in graduate school, I didn't have the easiest time. And I think looking back now, there were a couple of reasons. One is I didn't quite understand that what we were supposed to be doing as research mathematicians was writing proofs. I was naive. I didn't quite know what doing math meant. I thought it was asking questions and solving problems, but higher level mathematics is all about writing proofs, and I didn't understand that, and I didn't know that. So for a very long time I wasn't as much focused on proofs as I was focused on other things in the learning process, and because of that I wasn't the best proof writer, and because of that I was struggling. And I had I had challenges, and I couldn't understand why I was having the trouble that I was, because no one told me any of this. No one explained what learning math was really about. No one told me what the big secrets were. And so I went into education wondering, why is it that I'm really motivated? Why am I somebody who's really excited to do this work, who was told that they have talent in this work? Now I'm dying, and I couldn't get it. So I went into education to answer these questions.
I see.
Mhm.
That's really cool. I was also sort of just wondering how sort of your identity influences your perspective on like math education and how you help students.
Well, when I went to a college of education at the University of Arizona to understand success in mathematics, my eyes were opened to how much race, gender, equity, socioeconomic status, and sexual identity play into how successful somebody is in mathematics. And that blew my mind. And I think looking back on it, the reason no one ever told me the secrets of math, I wonder if it's because they didn't think that I was supposed to be in that world. Because I got some really direct messages about that. I was told that I wasn't intelligent enough to get a PhD. I was asked why was I in certain classes. Um, and and I'm not the only person. There are many, I mean, I met a woman yesterday when I did a math trauma workshop yesterday for students, and she said that one of her advisors had said to her that she was too dumb to be studying math and she shouldn't do it. Well, I mean, she ended up dedicating her thesis to that person. Uh, it's it, and this is I'm sorry to stutter. It's so personal. It's so personal when you don't fit in, quote unquote, the box of what a mathematician should be or what they look like, and all the messages that you get about who you are and whether or not you belong. Um, and that's a huge part of the work that I do with compassionate math now. So when I work with teachers, I talk to them about these issues, and I talk to them about, being mindful about recognizing their biases and who they recognize and who they don't recognize and who they acknowledge, and how they group students if they want to group by ability, and how they call on students. And when I talk to students, I talk to them about how a lot of factors contribute to their math success that has nothing to do with how smart they are. I mean, the zip code that your elementary school is located in has so much to do with how far you end up going in math. Whether or not your parents have a college degree, that doesn't have anything to do with how smart a kid is, but it will determine how far they go in math, generally speaking. And I always make sure to say to my students that human beings are mathematical beings, and you are a human being, and therefore you're mathematical. And it's so profound when you talk to somebody and you really spend the time to convince them that there's so much other nonsense that contributes to how they see themselves as a math person, and how well they quote unquote perform as a math person. And none of that has anything to do with their intelligence. None of that has anything to do with how hard they tried. It's all just the luck of the draw. And they have the capabilities and the power to overturn that story and to take control of their life.
That's wonderful. Sort of, I think you started diving into this a little bit, but I was just
Mhm.
wondering how your work in compassionate math, how you sort of use your like skill set and abilities to sort of help students overcome, like as you said before, their like math trauma and to like keep them
Mhm.
going without being discouraged or like having the feeling of like giving up.
Well, I kind of try to work through a direction of radical honesty. So, and by that I mean you have to let students know and let people know that there are a lot of factors, like I said, that contribute to math success. And it doesn't have much to do with how intelligent they are. Because most people are, I mean, almost everybody is fully capable. And I honestly believe everybody is very capable of being mathematically competent, mathematically literate. That doesn't necessarily mean they do school math, because school math is a separate animal. That doesn't mean that they will never be successful in life, but we mix up all of these ideas together about math success and what it means to be a math person. And if you're a math person, then you're smart. But if you're only a certain type of person, then you could be a math person, which means only certain type of people are smart. And that's not true. And all of that is tied in with my work with compassionate math. And so when you give students a set of tools to empower them, then those tools help transform the world. And I've seen it. I've seen the transformation at the end of like 2 hours working with students. and at the end of a semester of working with students where grades go up, confidence goes up because they've been taught so long that it's how smart you are and how hard you work and all of these numbers, but no one ever says to them, no, you've been set up in certain ways to, I don't know, so many of us in this world have been set up to fail. And it takes a lot of work to get over that setup, but it's still possible.
Thank you. I was also just wondering, what were some of your favorite moments while working with like students or like consulting teachers with passionate and compassionate math?
A favorite moment? um, I think my favorite moment, this is going to be strange. Um, I was working with a teacher and I knew he didn't want to work with me. He was forced, like I was hired as a one-on-one coach in his classroom, and he did not want me there. I knew he didn't want me there. I knew he was just in those meetings just to get up and get out and do whatever he needed to do. And I was persistent. I smiled. I was nice. I was trying to connect, but I got exhausted. And then one day he wasn't doing well. I wasn't doing well. And I just said, and he was like, why do you keep asking me all these questions? Why are you pushing me? Because I'm trying to get him to reflect on his practice. And I said to him, I said, do you think your classes are fun? And he said, what are you talking about? He goes, of course, my students love me. I was like, do you really think it's fun? It's like, can you think you could learn and have fun? And he got so mad at me and he cursed and he walked out of the room. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm getting fired. A couple of hours later, I got an email from him apologizing. He said he wasn't doing well and he took it all out on me. Um, his principal backed me up, which was amazing. Uh, and um, and the next time I saw him a few days later, he said to me, he said, I have not enjoyed teaching for a while. Things have been hard in my world. And I took it all out on you. I mean, he insulted me. Um, he questioned why I was in that room. It was a hard moment. And he said, I'm gonna try. And I said, okay, well, let's try. And next session, I went into a class filled with activities and grouping and work. And he was growing and pushing and making changes. And if I had at that moment said, shave your head, I think it'll help students, I think he would have shaved his head. Like he was on board. He was like, I'm gonna try, and he really did. And he radically transformed this class. By the end of the class, the students were playing games to think about probability. They were doing activities to think about the geometry that they were doing. They were doing Jeopardy to prepare for their district tests. And the energy in the class shifted, the behavior in the class shifted. And he said that those last few weeks was the best teaching that he had felt and the most fun that he had had working as a teacher in something like 10 years or 20 years. His student grades went up and it was unbelievable. So my funnest moment was getting cursed out by a middle school teacher who told me that he didn't need me in his world. Because that opened the door for a huge transformation. Yeah.
Wow, that's honestly amazing. I was not expecting anything like that.
I just that was so powerful. That was such a powerful moment. And yeah, so I'm happy to say that contract got renewed, to say the least.
Sort of on the same note, I would assume this was some sort of challenge, but I was just wondering about like other challenges you face like in your journey of like consulting or like working with teachers and students and how you sort of overcame those challenges.
Um, the biggest challenge I have is that I don't have super extensive experience in a K-12 classroom. And this was I mean when I talked about this teacher insulting me, this was a moment because he looked at me and he said, "How long have you been in a classroom?" And I said, "I've taught for 15 years." And he said, "Not at a university. How long were you in a middle school class?" And I told him my experiences, which I mean, I've taught summers, I've taught some uh programs. I was in classrooms, but did I ever teach in a classroom? No, because that was not the direction that I went. That wasn't my trajectory. That wasn't my experience. So the biggest challenge that I have is when I'm hired by a district and I go in and everyone's like, "Well, you're not in the classroom and so you don't know." And my response, so this is what I will say, yeah, I don't. I don't know. But I'm willing, I'm here, I will listen. So one thing that I don't do is walk in. I mean, if you hire me for a keynote to do a workshop, then I will, then I'm doing whatever it is that I'm like, whatever speech or workshop or activity that I'm doing. But I don't usually do that. Usually when I talk to a principal or superintendent, I will say, okay, tell me what you want, but I'm going to spend time working with the teachers. And I've actually put my foot down when I have meetings with teachers and I say, no admin, no principals. I want to talk to them because that's my approach. I have a huge body of knowledge and I do have a wealth of experience that I can call on when to help support teaching. And when I'm in a classroom and I'm told this is a little out of your league, this is my experience, then I will take a step back. I don't feel like I have my place um in always telling somebody. You don't walk into someone's house and tell them how to set up their furniture unless you're brought in to ask. And then what you do is you say, why is the furniture set up the way that it is? And how does it help you? And what challenges do you have with your furniture? And maybe I can help. And that's kind of the approach I take. It takes a lot of time and it takes trust building. And that's the direction that I take in. And so uh, oftentimes when I'm working one-on-one with teachers or in a small group with teachers, then it's been quite helpful. Did that make sense? I felt like I
Yeah.
rambled for a little.
No, I like the analogy between like the furniture and the math classroom because I never thought about it that way. I thought people, when it came to like changing the curriculum, like somebody just came in and was like, this is what you have to do to change it. I never
That's
knew it was
exactly what
like,
happens.
oh,
That's
really? Was
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah. So from what I understand, a lot of professional development is somebody walks in and says, "Here's how to do this, and this is what you're going to do," and throws a whole bunch of like information at teachers. Some of it could be useful, some of it could be like totally irrelevant, or we're just going to change the curriculum and here's a new book and yada yada yada. I don't like working like that. Because I would never want anybody. I mean, as a professor, there's something called academic freedom, which means I could do whatever I want in my classroom as long as I get the learning across. There's some very few guidelines that I have to follow. Other than that, I have free reign. And I believe that teachers are professionals in their craft and they're unbelievable human beings that are working really, really hard, doing one of the hardest jobs there is. I'm not going to walk in and say what's what in your classroom. I'm going to walk in and maybe keep my mouth shut and look around and make my own observations and then have a conversation. and say, what did I see, and what is your experience, and let's figure things out to see what needs to be improved. That's not the experience of a lot of teachers when they do professional development. That's something that I learned. Uh, and it's a reason why, I mean, if you ever look on Reddit, or if you ever look on a teacher thread, everybody talks about professional development like it's awful. I think professional development can be super transformative, but if somebody walks in and says, "Oh my God, your house is a mess and this is disgusting. We're going to clean this up," and then they reorganize it in a way that doesn't make sense for you, and then leave you with a whole bunch of work that you have to do all on your own and you have no time for it, of course that's not going to be helpful. So, and these conversations certainly have happened, because one of the first schools that I went to, it was a high school, a charter high school, and I was asked to come and observe. So I went in and I started observing. It was right after the pandemic, right, first semester, where in the fall, what was that, 2021, when everyone was first coming back, like we were all still masked and sitting apart, right? And I walked in, it was October. And God, I wanted to shoot myself. It was horrible. It was like, I was like, oh my God, I need to get out of this classroom. I can't stand being in here for another minute. It was excruciating. Okay, everybody, take out your pencil. This is high school. Why are you telling kids to take out their pencil? And here's what we're going to write down. Oh my God, what are you doing? And we're going to write down the objective right now together. And here's how you do the work. Do you remember how we did this problem? Do you remember? And I was like, what is going on? I hated it. I was suffocating. And then we went to the next classroom and it was the same. And next classroom is the same. And I was like, and the administrator was almost embarrassed about what we saw. And I had no words. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to go in here and completely tell these teachers how horrid they are in their craft. It was awful, but I didn't do that. There was no way I could do that. So I walked in and said, I was like, okay. And the administrator was like, let me come in. I was like, you are not in this meeting. No, no. And I sat with these teachers, and it was 4 of them. I'm almost, I think every math teacher who was in that day was in this meeting. And I was like, so tell me about your classes. And they started talking. And I said, oh, tell me about, oh, I noticed that you have to, why do you have to tell your students it's time to start the do now? And he said, well, because they don't know how to do that. I said, they're in high school. And I said, this is October. You should, like, why are norms and processes not set up? So I was asking them about the classes, about why is it that the students needed all these reminders, or why did they feel that the students needed all these reminders? And they told me that the students had really suffered from COVID, like really suffered. This was a working class community where everybody, no matter how sick they were, still had to, like, they were forced to go to work. Almost everybody had a relative who had died. They were taking care, these high school kids were taking care of their siblings. They were so traumatized that they couldn't remember day to day to day what to do and what to do in school. And the only thing that they needed was just to be in school, because school was a place that they felt was safe. And that was it. That was all that they had. And the teachers, so what I saw as a horrible, excruciating, painful, awful room where I could have just walked in and told them how terrible their teaching was done from a space of, like, compassion and need and love, because they needed to support their students that way. And And they'd never been asked what was happening in their classes in such a way that they could engage with and share. They said, this is all we knew how to do. We have to just support our students and remind them all the time. And so I took everything that they told and I thought about it, because I had a month to go back to them. And I went back to them and I said, your students are totally burnt out. They're suffering from burnout and trauma. And no one is talking about trauma for COVID. No one is saying that our entire society, whether or not you know somebody who died of COVID, whether or not you got COVID, we've all been traumatized as a society and nobody's saying it. And these kids are living it. And so, but the way to get through trauma is by feeling like you have a sense of control over something, that there's one thing that you can control. So we talked in that second session about giving the students control over their learning. And we talked, I mean, we just talked about ideas, and they had already run with a few suggestions that I had left them with. The biggest question that I asked them is, who's doing the mathematics in your class? Is it you or is it the students? And in the month between, they took that question and they ran with it. And they were like, oh my God, I'm doing all the math. My students aren't doing any math. Well, that's why they're not working. That's why they're not engaged. And so when we spent that second meeting talking about agency and power in order to support content, they were blown away by this new idea, and they ran with it. And then when I came back to see them, they said, oh, you know what we started doing? We started giving the students a deck of cards, and they could flip the cards, and black was positive, red was negative, and the number told them the coefficients in their polynomials when they started solving it. So now that wasn't an easy polynomial, right? If you're like, I don't know, solving a linear equation, right? Because you're getting random numbers. So you're not getting clean numbers with an integer answer, blah, blah, blah. It was like the kids had to work, but they got so into it because it was their equation that they had to solve, that they made. And they started doing things like giving you don't just give a worksheet. They said, here's a worksheet. These problems are worth 1 point. These problems are worth 3 points up until, I don't know, 10 points. And work, and you have to earn 50 points. I don't care if you have to do 51-point problems or 5 10-point problems, but your goal is to get 50 points. So this gave the students a sense of control in their class. And we started coming up with all of these ideas, and the class fully transformed. And it wouldn't have transformed if I just walked in and said, you know what you should do is you need to do group work in a way like this. Here's the framework where I'm going to stand here and tell you what to do. Nope. That's not what happened. What happened is I said, why is how is the setup of your class? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing these specific moves in your classes? And it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that was actually really amazing. I was
Yeah.
also just wondering, sort of on the same note, roughly on the same note, if you had any pieces of advice, like recommendations, resources, honestly anything for
Mhm.
students who are interested in pursuing something math related, who are feeling like they don't belong in the space or who feel like discouraged.
Um, Work together and be creative. So, if you're interested in math or science or robotics or whatever, then start a club or a group, and work on a project. Work on something that's going to be interesting. I don't remember. I was in a conference and I heard there was a woman whose daughter wanted to, so she was a researcher presenting and she was talking about her daughter. And she was talking about how her daughter joined the robotics club. And when she joined the robotics club, I think she was the only girl in the club. And so the boys looked at her and said, "You do the presentation," which apparently, oh, you're smiling. Is that something that,
I think this is kind of like a common experience in
okay,
yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. I suspected that that was the case. I mean, when I was young, we didn't have like math clubs and robotics clubs like that, or at least not in my school, so I don't know. But I can totally picture this, yeah. So it was like you do the presentation or you write the report or something like, or you have good handwriting, etc. So, and whenever her daughter tried to contribute, no one would listen to her. Uh, and they didn't end up winning first place. And I think the mechanical differences were apparent from the story, things that the daughter had seen and no one had acknowledged. So a mom and her daughter established a girls' STEM group or robotics group, and they're really flourishing and winning awards. Yeah. So if you can't find your own community, then create your own community. And that's what I've done throughout my entire career. So I, in graduate school, I had my friends who helped and supported me, and we worked through and got through our programs together. As a faculty member, I had my colleagues that would support me and say, you know what conference you really need to go to, you know what space you need to really present at. These are the spaces that you need to be in. And that's how you get going. And you ignore the haters. Uh oh, you take the haters with a grain of salt because sometimes there's a little bit of truth to why they hate you, but you ignore the haters. Um, and uh, and you find your people and you find your voice. So now with Compassionate Math, I found my voice. And all the friends that I had made along the way, all the people that I've helped support, all the people that have helped support me and have held me up, and the people that I've held up, we all have been supporting one another in growing our communities, our networks, our successes. I mean, so much of the work that I get from Compassionate Math is by referral because someone's like, no, 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 she might have like an old website, but her work is amazing. Or no, 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 I've seen her talk and she's unbelievable and really powerful speaking. Uh, it's all just by working and developing. So the best thing to do is to support one another and to be there for each other and to build a community, because it is amazing what you can accomplish when you are in a space where you are feeling supported, where you are feeling nurtured, and where you are feeling that you have no limits.
Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your experience and story. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really had a lot of fun. It was really nice to meet you, Angelina, and I wish you well.
Thank you.